Hello, I'm Marc, Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Julie Simpson, CEO of ResourceiT in the house. How are we doing, Julie?
Fantastic, thank you, Marc. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, pleasure. So, as you know, the Channel Chat series is starting off this month with a series around women in tech. Now, I didn't think I'd ever do a series on women in tech, to be honest with you. And I know the awards is up this month because I know the Women's Festival is being celebrated at the end of the month. And I think it's great that it's sort of promoting sort of successful women. But, what value do you think it really adds to the industry? I.e., does it promote more women coming into the industry, or does it potentially just sort of segregate more women not coming into the industry and not being part of it?
Really interesting question, and I'm really glad you asked it. So it's my belief that any opportunity to reach people, for people to hear and see great stories, recognition of people and what they've achieved is a great thing. There's a lot of disbelievers out there that think it kind of just exists because it's the right thing to do, but actually we are recognizing some incredible talent in our industry, and I think it's a crucial component of what is driving success in the channel.
Really? Okay. Because some of the awards, I know my male counterparts will look at it. Some of the awards will be like Innovation of the Year or Something of the Year. Where are these awards coming from? Where are these names coming from? Because obviously the men don't have that. And half the time the men were saying to me, why do women have these awards? No one outside the industry knows about it anyway. It's just almost like a party internally. So what are you thinking about some of the awards? Some of them are sort of unusual names as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got to come up with creative ways to recognise individuals for their extreme capability and skill. And, I have the same conversation over and over. People say to me, well, you wouldn't have a group called Men in Technology. So why would you have a group called Women in Technology? Well, for me, Men in Technology is the technology industry, right? Because 87% or 83% of jobs in the tech industry are taken by guys. So I think using the different categories, highlighting people's different skills, coming up with some creative ways that are actually interesting and give people the chance to express their skill, their capability, their influence and what they're achieving is a great way for us to move the industry forwards, which is absolutely what I'm all about.
But does it actually, Julie, does the message get outside the industry? I.e., we have the awards, everyone turns up, and I think it's great, don't get me wrong, I think it's great to celebrate, but does that message get out to anyone else? Because I don't see anyone coming in saying, oh, I want to come into tech because I heard that Joe Blow's got the Innovation of the Year award, or I heard that Sarah Shields was the Women in Channel, or whatever it is. And I think it's great that you're celebrating it, but I don't see the message getting outside of that. So how can we actually get the message outside to people outside the industry that don't even know this is going on?
I mean, that's just a fantastic point you raise, right? We absolutely all need to do more to get ourselves communicated outside of the industry. We have absolutely no question that 97% of big businesses use technology. And in the technology sector is where those customers find their future leaders. So we have to communicate with each other about what women are doing in the tech industry, because we need those women to be the technical leaders, the sales directors, the marketing directors in customer organizations, what I would think of as customer organizations. So no, it doesn't get out enough, but it absolutely bloody needs to, because if we don't do it, it's just going to stand still. So I would say to every single person that is ever nominated, that ever wins, that it is your duty to communicate to everybody that you know what you're doing, what you're achieving, what your colleagues are doing, and what difference that is actually making, and what a wonderful sector this is for men and women to work in.
Yeah, because Julie, you're very active online about the importance of there being more women in the IT industry, but quite honestly, does it really make a difference? I.e., nurses are only sort of 12% of men are nurses. Other sort of sectors are only dominated by one sex, like heavily biased around that. What's your views now? Does it have to move? Does this, we said about 15.9%. Does that percentage have to move? Because it hasn't moved in 10 years. Let's be honest, it hasn't even moved even remotely up in 10 years. Is it going to move? Is it going to make a difference?
So it has to move. It has to move, and for two massive reasons. The first is that right? We're not done. We're sitting in a world where technology is becoming more and more dominant in every single area of our lives, and that is only going to continue. You know, look at AI, look at how technology is penetrating. And gone are the days where the woman stayed at home and looked after the children and the man went to work. If there are not more women in the industry, in the technology industry, then what are families going to do? How are they going to survive if most of the jobs that are available are about technology? And that doesn't mean sitting in a cupboard and coding and, you know, all of that kind of farcical history of what people's perception of working the tech industry is about. So the first reason is families need the support. Both parents need to be working, men, women, gay couples from every sector, every culture, you know, across the world. 50% of the population is women. And we can't have 50% of the population not being accommodated in an industry where they can earn money and have successful careers. We just can't do that. And what does that say to our second generation? What does that say to everyone's daughters and nieces and cousins and, you know, don't bother looking at technology because there's no jobs there for women. So it's got to change. It has to change.
But does that mean, Julie, they have to come into IT? And i.e., so, you know, when we're communicating about the women in tech message, what are we trying to achieve here? Is it equal opportunity or equal outcome? I.e., maybe they've got the same opportunity. They just don't want to come into IT. They just don't want to do it. You know, why do we have to sort of like? Is it potentially discriminating against men almost? They're trying to get more women into the IT channel.
Oh, Mark, I love this conversation. You poke that bee's nest, boy. Go for it. It has to change, right? Okay, I am a business owner. I am the CEO of a highly successful IT channel agency. We work with some of the biggest technology partners on the planet: Microsoft, AWS, Vodafone, these organizations. If I employ in my business everyone the same, then I come with one set of views. I have a view of what life is like, what the value proposition needs to be, what the business message needs to be. And you know what? That could be really successful because all the people like me and all the people I employ will respond to that message. What I need is diversity. So if you've got technology companies where 90% of the leaders and the employees are men, then their propositions and what they create and their views and their messaging is going to appeal to other men because they just are not female. I mean, look at the Range Rover, right? The Range Rover Evoque, most successful car Range Rover ever created. Why is that? Because they put women on the design team. And I got that snippet from Roland White, who's the D&I director at Microsoft. So, you know, without diversity in our organizations, without women being in leadership positions, then we are restricting our growth as organizations. And at a total commercial level, that is the reason why businesses need to take a good hard look at the gender imbalance that exists in their companies. And then, as I said earlier, on a personal level, we have a responsibility to make our generation, our next generation, fully equipped to earn well, to produce great human beings, and to go forward and make the next generation successful in their lives. So I totally get what you're saying. I speak to a lot of men who are like, that's just women banging on about women. Right? I get that. I totally get that. I love men. I have a fantastic husband. You know, I've worked with some amazing male leaders. But what I'm trying to say to you is it's not about women going on about women. It's about balance, and it's about opening ourselves up to the breadth of opportunity by having diversity and being able to give that contribution at a business level for commercial gain.
Yeah, so you talk about diversity, and I do agree with you. A lot of companies come up to me and say, Mark, you know, we want to employ women, etc., but there's just not any women coming in or applying for jobs to give them. So it's very difficult for them to get diversity. What would you say to a company that is trying to do it, but there's just no applicants to actually come in? They just sort of say, look, we'd love to take on 4 or 5 women, but there's just no women applying. And obviously we've got to take on someone. So in the end, they've just taken on more men. And of course, the problem continues. What would you say to those sort of companies in terms of actually trying to do something different? Because it is pretty challenging.
Oh, it's huge. And I have those conversations all the time. People who are willing, they're willing and they want the solution, but they don't want to put the work in to actually change it. So the first thing is Take a really hard look at what your business looks like to a future woman that may want to work there. Go and have a look at your website. Does your business represent itself as a diverse and inclusive organisation? You know, what does your shop window actually say about you? The second thing is, how are you positioning the roles you're recruiting for? Look at the job descriptions. Does it sound like, if you are a woman, that you could succeed in that environment? Because, you know, at the end of the day, women are women. We can't change the fact that women have the kids, right? That is a fact. It's not going anywhere. So, you know, we are the ones that are bringing children into the world. We need career breaks. We need flexible working. We need the opportunity to be able to pick the kids up from school and do all of that. And it's not, I'm not just saying that only women do that, right? I know men do it as well, but there is a very strong maternal instinct as a woman that you want to pick up your kids from school. You want to be there for them, but you also are a person and an experienced individual that can add value to a business. So have a look at your job descriptions and see if what you're saying there would give a woman a flexibility and an opportunity to thrive in your environment. And then the third thing is promote your inner winners, right? If you have got women in your business, get them online, get them on LinkedIn, talking about what a fantastic place this is to work, why I choose to work here, what this brings me as an individual, because women attract other women. So just 3 ideas for how to get started on changing that. So don't just talk about it and wish it was bloody different. You want it to be different, do something about it. Get off your backside and really take a hard look at what needs to change and do something about it.
Maybe they just haven't got any women to actually say that message, Julie. They haven't got one woman in the company to say that message.
Well,
That's funny.
Julie Simpson at ResourceiT.net, right? If anyone out there wants to recruit more women and wants to have that conversation with me about how they can do that and how they can find out what is great about their company that would attract other women, I'm all up there for being able to do that. And my whole network, I work for my own business, obviously, but I'm also a co-founder of the WIT Network. We've got 4,000 members in 80 countries. It's a not-for-profit volunteer organisation. It's £100 a year to join as an individual. And we're doing mentoring circles. We're doing all sorts of programs that help businesses move forwards. So, you know, the offer's there, the resources are there. It's up to you to take the hand, the olive branch that's being offered, and do something.
Okay. Julie, one other point to come out that, again, this is quite delicate. I have to say this because I remember Alan Sugar said it a few years ago about not employing women because, you know, they get pregnant and they go off for their careers, etc. Now, there's an underlying current in the channel at the moment about that in particular, i.e., and I can't name companies, but I'm telling you now, it was just like, well, if we apply this woman in this role, you know, at that sort of age where they might want children, we're going to lose them for 2 or 3 years, Mark. So what's the point of even getting them in the building? How do we get over that when employers are thinking, oh, she might be here for a year, but then she'll be off for 2 years? How do we get over that? Because obviously companies can't directly say that to me, but my God, they're thinking it. There's no doubt they're thinking it.
And I agree, right? I am a leader of a business and I have a responsibility to all the people that work in my organisation, and we're a professional services organisation. So if someone goes on maternity leave, there isn't another person that can just pick up that job. And, you know, I actually had this conversation at a round table I was invited to that was run at the House of Lords. And it was a women in technology discussion. And this subject came up, you know, about maternity leave and, you know, how do we remove our bias about thinking, oh, well, no, she's, you know, coming up for 30. She's been married for a couple of years. Chances are she's going to have a baby in a minute. And you know what? I stood there and said, do you know what? I would make the same decision. If I lined up a bloke and a woman at the same age who were equally qualified and I both thought they were a great fit for the role, but I had this nagging doubt, and I've got 4 children. My husband and I, between us, we've got 4 children, so I'm a mother. I would employ the bloke. And the reason I'd employ the bloke is because I know he's not going to go off on bloody maternity leave for 2 years, right?
And you said you were a promoter of women. You know, terrible.
Right. So I said this in the House of Lords, and we had absolute uproar. I mean, years ago, I'm sure they would have been throwing old fruit at me or something. But what I said was, what small businesses need is more help from this government to support those small business. 80% of people in this country are employed by small business. And what we do not get is any support from government to help us to support those women when they go on maternity leave. I have no choice. I have to put someone on statutory maternity pay because I can't afford to pay them a full salary and employ someone else on a full salary to do their job for a year while they take a year off. I can't do it because I have a responsibility to the other 20-odd people that I employ. And do you know what happened? The small business director of HSBC was in that session in the House of Lords. And about a month later, he wrote to me, he said, Julie, I want to send you this. I heard what you said. And HSBC introduced a policy. I mean, it didn't work for us because we were too big, but they introduced a policy that said, we will give financial support to businesses under £1 million if a key member of staff goes out on maternity leave. We'll reduce their interest rates. We'll help and support them with loans. And he took that as a direct result of me standing up in the House of Lords and saying, like, what are the financial institutions doing about it? What are the banks doing about it? What's the government doing about it? Because I can't do that. I go out of business. So, you know, it's there. The opportunity's there. Again, people just need to step up, grab hold of that spiky poke and get on with it.
Brilliant. Right, Julie, what is the number one thing men can do to be allies of women in tech? Because, mate, there's a lot of men out there that'll be, oh, this is some gimmick. There'll be loads of people thinking that. But what is the one thing, if they want to be allies of women in tech, what's the one thing they can do?
I think the one thing that all men can do is talk to the women that they know in their industry, ask them what they think the blockers are to them being in leadership positions, become an ally to those women, support them in any possible way that they can, and tell your mates that that's what you're doing. Don't sit there and be a silent supporter and think, no, I can't do that. Everyone's going to call me a dickhead and think, you know, oh, look at him supporting all the girls. You've got daughters or wives or mothers or aunties or sisters, whether you're gay or straight or whatever culture you are from. We all have a responsibility to address this imbalance, or we are facing a future where I don't know how women are going to work because the accommodation is not there at the moment for women to be able to have children and have a successful career in IT. So all the men listening, this is not women banging on about women. This is about us standing up to say we need to drive change in our industry because we believe everyone has the right to have a successful career. So talk to some people, find out what you can do and get out behind the shadows and say what you think and support us because it's critical to our future generation.
Okay, Julie, I'll do it.
And that includes you, Marc.
Oh, great.
Tell
All right. What is your views on the so-called queen bee syndrome? Now, what I mean by that, hopefully you know what I mean by that, because I sort of did a bit of research on it. So have you ever experienced it yourself? How would you recommend women handle this situation? Because it's definitely out there, because I've been doing, you know, I Googled it as well. And it's like, actually, God, I didn't know what it was straight away. And I thought, queen bee situation, is this real? Do women actually experience this in the workplace?
Absolutely, they do. So what a queen bee is, for those that don't know, is a woman that's in a successful, strong position that keeps other women down because they feel threatened by those women. And, you know, I have had to wear a pair of pants and get to the top and be aggressive and be like a guy to succeed in this business. And I'm not having anyone you know, coming on my turf and impacting me in that position. So yes, it absolutely does exist. I think it was Madeleine Albright that said there's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women. So, you know, have I come across it? Yes. Do I believe it exists? Yes. But you know what? Someone else said to me, the thing is, if we talk about this, then it gives it energy and it actually makes it exist. The fact is, those women that perhaps have a perception that they may feel threatened by others just are uneducated and just need to be guided. You don't need to be threatened by me. So what I would say to anyone who's experiencing that, get yourself out there and have that direct conversation. And do you know what? You'll earn some respect. If you say to that so-called queen bee, I'm feeling like you're keeping me down. You know, I don't know. Do you feel threatened by me? Is there an issue here? Can we talk about it? But what women do, and we've done it since the playground, is we go off and we yimmy about it behind someone's back and we don't face up to it and we hide from it. That is not the way to deal with it. Just like any other issue you experience in the workplace, you've got a problem, sit that person down quietly. You don't have to be aggressive or confrontational, and you have the conversation. And the queen bee, do you know what? All she's doing is protecting how hard she's worked to get where she is. And if you can be an ally and be on side with that person, they will support you like you would not believe. So face it, deal with it, talk about it. And yes, it does exist, Mark. Absolutely.
Okay, so apart from that, one of those reasons, what do you think? You know, women make up 51% of the workforce. You said that earlier, but less than 17%. I think it's 15.9 or whatever it is, are actually in the tech sector. So, Julie, what is putting them off coming into technology?
There's just not enough information out there, Mark. Everyone that I ever speak to, if I ever speak to any young girls, you know, 10, 12, 15, and I talk to them about, you know, what are you going to do for your future career? Have you thought about the technology sector? Just the word technology, they're like, whoa, I don't want to do that and sit in front of a code. And so I tell them about the fact that I've stood on the stage in Las Vegas and introduced Satya Nadella, one of the most powerful men in the world in one of the biggest businesses. I've traveled to some fantastic countries. I do sales, I do marketing, I do business development. I have grown hugely as a person as a result of the opportunity that I have in the sector. And what we really need is more female entrepreneurs and more females that have that little grain of a business idea, of an app, of something that they think, wow, that would be, amazing. And we need to basically understand that it's not just about sitting in a cupboard and coding. And that was my perception of the technology industry. And I'm sure it is a lot of others who don't actually know about it. So again, what I say is, if you work in the tech sector and you're in sales, you're in marketing, you're in any other role, design, social media, I mean, there's never been a better opportunity to earn money in social media, because every single tech business on the planet, in fact, not only just tech businesses, employs digital marketing managers. I mean, you could sit on social media all day and still work in technology. There's fantastic opportunities. People just don't know about it. And we need to get into the schools and tell people what their opportunity is and have a good old look at that curriculum. I think is a great start to that.
I think I know the answer to this already, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you think there's enough being done to help women get into the industry? And if not, what would you recommend?
There absolutely isn't enough being done, Mark. And, I think from just this conversation, hopefully I've given a few ideas about where you can go. So talking to your contacts, your relatives, promoting what you're doing, getting on, I don't use Facebook personally, but getting on Facebook and posting pictures of the trips you've been on and the stuff that you've done so that people take notice of it. And that we need to actually get into schools and get some education into the schools about the technology sector, because the information that's there at the moment is archaic. And the teachers are not aware. They don't know about that. There's such a divide between the teachers that are bringing up our kids and teaching them and the technology sector. There's a massive gap there, which we need to address in schools, in colleges, in universities, so that people are more aware of what the opportunity is. And I would encourage anybody from the business sector that has an opportunity to go into a school to talk about their role, what they're doing, especially if you're a woman, and just get some inspiration in there. So at least people know what the opportunity is to explore. Because if you don't know about it, you're not going to pursue it, are you?
Yeah, and you mentioned there slightly as a positive, but I'm also going to sort of flip that as well. You mentioned there about sort of incentives and trips away, etc. Does that also alienate women, i.e., it's going away, it's drinking, it's weekends away, it's weeks away?
What, women don't drink or have weekends away? Where have you been for the last 50 years?
If they can't,
blokes that do that,
if they can't get away with kids or whatever, do they actually think, oh, I don't want to go in that sector because it's almost, it seems a bit more, you know, a bit almost like Wolf of Wall Street-esque, you know, I don't want to go into that industry. Does that put women off going into it, you think?
Well, do you know what puts women off in that respect is the lack of support that they get from their partner to be able to actually do that. So unfortunately, there is still a high percentage of men out there that think it's the woman's responsibility to stay at home and not have the weekends away and not pursue their career. You know, I am incredibly grateful to my husband because he is without ego. And if he did have an ego, there was no way I could have done what I've done. He didn't care if he picked the kids up or put a roast chicken on for dinner. You know, it didn't mean that he felt that he wasn't masculine or wasn't a proper man because he did those things. You know, men have to take more responsibility and accept that women are as entitled to the men to be able to enjoy that freedom. So a lot of that comes from the men giving the support to the women in there so they can achieve their careers. And also the women being brave enough to say, I'm bloody well doing it, so get over it.
Yeah, good. Good. I wouldn't argue with Julie.
You're doing a pretty good job.
Last two questions. Gender pay. Now, is this an issue? Because, you know, I look at some of the, and maybe not so much in sales, I'm not sure, but is gender pay when you get into leadership roles, is that an issue for women? You know, there is some gender pay issues and not getting the same pay as men sometimes.
Well, I mean, my thoughts on that are that I think because of the jobs that a lot of women do, because of the flexibility they need, we're taking lower paid jobs, which skews the figures. Right, you know, those figures are taken from you know, all of the reasons that I'm sure if you research it a bit more, you can see that you know, it's not a like for like comparison that skews that. I think men are more confident with asking for more money. So women out there, you know, you think you're worth more, then you get in there and you push it. What's going to happen? They're going to say no. That no one's going to sack you because you've asked for a pay rise. So, you know, I think men are more confident. They push harder and feel more entitled to actually what they're worth. And women need to sort that shit out because we are worth just as much as a guy. And need to be braver and more confident with the funding that we ask for. I mean, I don't have any disparity in any role in terms of pay, and most of the women that I speak to, I don't think they feel that you know, they're underpaid. I'm sure it exists. You know, obviously, I can't get into the corners of every finance team in every technology sector, so maybe it does exist. Maybe that's just about the fact that you need to ask for more bloody money. Yeah. If you find out that he's being paid 20 grand more than you, and get your ass into HR and say he's being paid 20 grand more than me, I want what he's on. And they'll, you know, go, oh, sorry, yeah, sure, no problem. Obviously, it's not that easy, but speak up.
Yeah, and for the listeners out there, if you do go and ask your boss for a pay rise and you do get sacked, that was Julie's advice, not mine. I don't want to get Candice coming back. Marc, she said go and ask for a pay rise. Now I've been made redundant.
Julie Simpson said.
My advice. Right, my last question for you. Yourself, how and why did you get into the tech industry, and what advice would you give to a female that's looking to get into the sector and potentially follow your footsteps to the top?
So how did I get into the industry? I had done a few sales roles. My first marriage had broken up. I had an 18-month-old daughter and a 100 grand mortgage. She's now 27. So that was quite a big amount. And my ex-husband did contribute, I must say, but I nevertheless needed more money. And I looked around at where the highest paid jobs were. And guess what? That was in IT companies. So somehow, without any experience in IT whatsoever, I managed to get an interview as a telesales person in an IT company, an IT provider. And the managing director there, Martin Neal from ICS, gave me an opportunity. He saw something in me, could see that, you know, I had energy, commitment, drive, all of those things, and gave me a chance. I have to say, for the first 6 months, I didn't know what I was bloody talking about. Absolutely no clue. It was like a foreign language. But I kept going. I kept pushing. I asked other women in the business for help. And, I can remember a conversation of sitting on some packing boxes with someone because I didn't want to get spotted asking questions. And what the hell am I selling? I haven't got a bloody clue. But she did so talk me through all of that. And, that was a big memory. So you've got to put yourself out there to find the role and be brave about that and be really on. I want to get into the technology sector. I'm looking for a business that has this kind of culture, that has a leader that is willing to, take a punt on people, and that's how I got into it, and never looked back. I worked for that business for a good few years, worked with their Microsoft relationship, and launched ResourceiT in 2003 as a result of that experience. So, it's there, it's out there, the opportunity's there, but like anything else in life, you sit back looking out the window going, I wish, or get off your backside, get out there and do something about it.
Yeah, and do you know what, Julie, I echo those thoughts, because there will be a lot of people out there listening to this thinking, even if it's just for, they need to earn more money, the tech sector is a very well-paid industry. And it's not just sales jobs, it's customer services, help desk, analytical operations, whatever the roles that women can come into. It's not just having to go into sales or technology. There's other roles around that they can come into that are very well more paid than outside industry. So really, really good advice. Julie, look, that's the end of the show. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.